Sales management means having targets set that are explained to your department or your team. It means clear communication on the progression towards the goals. It means having specific numbers, not generalizations. It means consistent feedback, and it means accountability of what needs to be done to achieve the result. How is everybody this morning? Welcome to JT in the Law Show 186. And today I want to talk a little bit about accountability. Today's show is inspired by a conversation that I had just yesterday, with a very close client of mine, and I will tell you more about that shortly. But for those that are joining, whether watching live or on replay for the first time, this is JT in the Raw, where I just chew the thin on business based on experiences that I've had over the last week and comparing them to what I've been through over the last 30 years in business. So as you can imagine, I have just a few thins to chew. Good morning, Alyssa. How are you this morning? Scott, good morning. Just a quick mention also, ladies and gents, today I have a throwback, a show that I did that kind of relates to today's show, and that was show 52. 52, so that was 1 year after launching show 52. I did a show on the importance of having a scoreboard in your business. What we know is that when we play any game of sport or we do any athletic event, to see whether we win or we lose or to measure our performance, we look at the scoreboard. We look at what time we did. We look at how far we threw. We look at what score it was. Did we how many goals, behind, shots, assists, whole bunch of data behind that. And in show 52, I talk about the importance of having a scoreboard in your business. If you've not ever seen show 52 or you need a reminder of what a scoreboard looks like, and you can watch that show, because I think you will find that extremely useful based on today's conversation. So, what is today all about? Colette, good morning. Dwayne Wimmer, how are you, man with the big guns over there in the United States? Scott, not 25, 52, 5'2". But I know what you mean, so I'll send it to you. So let me tell you about what happened yesterday. Yesterday I was sitting down with this very dear client of mine. Not sure she's really a client. She's my mum. I was sitting down with my mum and we were talking about what she does in her business. She's got a property management business. And so her job is, of course, to manage properties and to rent properties. The number one goal is that they want to get more tenants in to their properties. Now, the first thing, good morning, Cindy. See you next week. Jamie Hayes, good morning. So the first thing that I said to her is, how do you measure the success of your property management department and where they're at? And she said, well, that's really simple. We look at our vacancy rate. So our vacancy rate, Frosty, I've already said good morning to you. We look at our vacancy rate and the vacancy percentage. So of the total number of properties they have, what is the number that are available? So in other words, their capacity and what is free in their capacity that they need to fill. I gave that a big tick. That's a great tick. That's a great percentage. We then talked about, well, okay, so, what are you doing with your property management team? And he said, well, they get commission on lettings. And so what I now can do is at the end of the month is that I compare the commission that property manager A got compared to property management B or property manager C or property manager D. And I can look at which one of them have produced the most commission and perhaps reward them accordingly, whatever that may look like. And I said, so what that basically means is that they've let the most properties. Yes, they've let the most property, but also let the properties with the highest rent. Okay, great. Then she went on to tell me about having a sales meeting every single week. I went, great, that's awesome. What do you cover in that meeting? And she talked to me about what they cover in the meeting. And I went, right, awesome, fantastic. Then I talked to her about what happens between the meeting around feedback and what that feedback looks like. And we went through that. And then finally I asked her about the prospects and what the follow through is. So now let's break down all of those conversations and see how these are relevant for whatever business you're in. This is not a fitness business show. This is about business in general. So the first thing is, Mum was very clear on the number that they needed to improve in the business. They needed to decrease the vacancy rate of her properties. Are you crystal clear on the number one number or KPI, key performance indicator, which is not a responsibility, it's an actual number? Are you super clear on the number one number you need to shift in your business? Are you? In this example, crystal clear. We need to decrease our vacancy rate. That's the number. So I'm asking you, give me a thumbs up, give me a love heart if the answer is yes, or give me a thumbs down. Can you do a thumbs down? If you're not uber clear on what that number one number is that you need to shift in your business or that you need in your business. So that becomes our first thing. So the first thing is we need to be very clear on what that number is. Okay, second thing is she was rewarding based on the commission that people were generating for the business. Whether that be a recognition reward or a financial reward, it doesn't matter what the reward is, but there was a reward based on the commission earned. But when we sat down and I said to her, okay, so let's imagine that person A, property manager A, sees 30 people and only 10 people take up a property, and person B sees 20 people and 10 people take up a property, and C, property C is 10 people and 10 people take up a property. I said, well, which is the best one? She says, well, the person that generates the most commission. I said, it's not. Your goal is to decrease your tenancy rate. So it's the person that closes the most. It's the person that shows the most properties and gets the most tenants. That is your star performer. And often in business, we don't identify what is the behavior or the result that we actually want. So yes, from the business perspective, it's great that we're generating high income. But when we drill it down, she's seeing 30 people for 10 tenants, 30 for 10. So that's a 33% closing. Person B's at 50%, but person C's at 100%. We want person C not seeing 10 people. We want them seeing 20 qualified leads and having 100%. So ladies and gentlemen, this is a key component for you in your business. Are you tracking the right number and therefore rewarding the behavior to get that number? But what I want to challenge all of us is if this is the number, then what is the behavior that we need to reward to get that number? Perhaps we need to drill a bit deeper and look a little bit deeper. Number 3 point. So these team members that work for my mum have been working for her for 15 years. 15 years. Wouldn't we in the fitness industry die to have somebody working for us for 15 years? Even 10 years. But for 15 years. And I said to her, so now that we're really starting to talk about how we might manage these people better, what would you do? Oh, well, I'm going to go in on Monday and I am going to change how we do things. Whoa. Yeah, you can't do that. So here's the key for you, ladies and gentlemen, is that you've got to be consistent from day one on how you are going to manage those people. Because if you are lackadaisical, if you're letting them run the sales meeting, if you're letting them be sales managers, not you be the sales manager, and then you change or shift, you will quite simply piss them off. which means they could leave. So from the beginning, we must be consistent in our management style. Every meeting, every sales management meeting has to have the same agenda. We're looking at the same numbers and we're going through the same process. When we do that, there's consistency. And your team will thrive on consistent management. Inconsistent management will pinch them off and will cause them to leave. That will give you turnover. But on the flip side of things, you as the leader must be consistent in what you expect from your team. You can't chop and change the goalposts, which is why you might want to watch show 52. You can't change overnight the way you're going to manage your team. You have to change that gradually. Or from day one, the way you run your management team and your sales meetings is around that accountability. And it's reporting on that accountability. I was always a big fan of having one meeting about numbers and one meeting about operations. So that numbers meeting is focused purely on the numbers in our business. We can talk operations, we can talk strategy at another stage, but let's just focus on the numbers. Let's see where they're at and let's see why they're there and perhaps what do we need to do to change them. But let's not get bogged down in the operations side of things. So, the fourth point that I identified in this conversation with my mum was about feedback. So often in our sales teams, we have a meeting at the beginning of the week and we have a meeting at the end of the week, or we have it every 7 days or whatever it is. The most successful businesses are catching up with their sales team every single day. Now, a great book to read, if you haven't read it, is Mastering the Rockefeller Habits by Verne Harnish. We actually interviewed Verne Harnish in the Fitness Business podcast a couple of weeks ago. And I cannot believe how little that show was downloaded. Holy shit. It's an awesome show because he talks about what meetings we should have in our business. Verne's not in the fitness industry, but he gives us a great format for meetings. And in all reality, your sales management should involve a stand-up huddle meeting every single morning on what are they up to that day. It's a cracking show. He gives you that format on what needs to be there. So from a sales management perspective, we got to be meeting with our team every single day and giving them feedback. It's just critical because if we wait week on week, 7 days, the horses are bolted. The behavior that we're doing as salespeople have become a habit. We need to change it. We need to be more aggressive, and I don't mean that as in aggressive, I mean more consistent in what we're doing and supporting our team, giving them that feedback. Yes, okay, poor, let's fix it. So that's number 4, feedback. And finally, number 5 is what are we doing to follow through or follow up with our prospects? There is some research, I think it comes out of like a guy called Adam Smith from, I think it was like 1871, where he said we really need to follow up in our lead process 12 to 13 times, and the average person gives up after 3 attempts. So in other words, in this example with my mum, she shows the property and we follow up once or we follow up twice, maybe we follow up 3 times, and then we give up. We should be continuing that follow-up process. So part of our weekly sales management meeting is, where are we at with these prospects? And we identify why they're not joining, why they're not renting, why they're not buying, because there will be a commonality there. And then that develops our training process for our team moving forward. It's not to find out where the team's screwing up. That's not the language we want. We want to find out why they're not buying, why they're not joining, why they're not renting a property, and let's see if we can overcome that with some training. Simple as that. So ladies and gentlemen, today's show has been all about this concept of sales management. I think too many times in business, we just let things just roll. Too many times we just let things just roll. And as leaders, we have to have the courage and the discipline to challenge that and to give that feedback. So the things that I want us to be thinking about when we're running our sales team is be very clear on the one number that we're trying to hit. Is it sales? Is it, in this case, tenancy vacancy rate? Is it inspections? Is it people bums on seats in a cycle class? What is the number we want? That is the number. Then what we need to do is that we need to work out how do we get more of that? How do we get more of those people? How do we change that number? Too many times in my mum's sales meeting, she would just say, right, go out and get more tenants. Go out and get more tenants. Go out and get more tenants. And for us in the fitness industry, we often say, go out and get more leads. Go out and get more leads. Go out and get more leads. But do we actually teach them how to get more leads? Do we role play? How do we get more leads? That's part of our weekly sales meeting. That's what we have to do. We have to teach our teams how to get to that number. We can't tell them, we have to teach them. Let me say that again. We can't tell them, we have to teach them how to hit that number. I hope you got some value out of today's show, all about management of our sales team. Look, I know I'm just tipping the iceberg in regard to this, but I hope it stimulates some thoughts for you and that you might go away and perhaps look at how you're managing your sales team, how you're running your weekly sales meetings on whatever you're selling. And I hope it really adds value to you. And if it does, or you know anyone that would get value from the show, I'd be really grateful if you would tag them in the comments below so that they could watch the show, so that they could get some value and see where you're coming from in your business or how you want to run your team, but also so that they might also in their businesses run their sales teams a little bit better. So please, tag anyone in the comments below. Ladies and gentlemen, accountability is critical in our business, but we need to be consistent in ensuring that accountability and clearing our communication around that accountability. Quote of the week is this: from day one, hold your team accountable. Don't bring it in later. From day one, hold your team accountable. From day one, hold your team accountable. How do you do that? Clear, consistent communication. You must communicate with your team. You must be clear on what that is, and you must be consistent. It can't be once every 15 years. It can't be once a year, and it can't be once a month. It's got to be daily or weekly. Consistent, clear communication. Hold your team accountable from the beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in to JT in the Raw. I'm here same time every single week, same place. And I will catch you next week or on the flip side.